There are moments in life that stay with you forever. Not because they were beautiful or full of joy, but because they broke something inside you that could never be fully fixed. This is one of those moments. This is the story of a family, a car ride, a few angry words, and the seconds that changed everything. If you have ever argued with someone you love while driving, please listen closely. This story is not just a story. It is a warning. It was a Saturday evening in early October. The sky was turning a deep orange as the sun began to fall behind the hills. Ahmed was behind the wheel, his hands resting loosely on the steering wheel, his eyes on the road ahead. Beside him sat his wife, Sara. In the back seat, their two children, 8-year-old Zara and 5-year-old Bilal, were sitting quietly, tired from a long day out. The family had spent the afternoon at a relative's home, and now they were heading back. Everyone was exhausted, the kind of tired that settles deep in your bones after a full day of smiling, talking, and pretending everything is fine. Ahmed had been quiet for most of the drive. He was thinking about work, about the bills sitting on the kitchen counter, about a decision he had made 2 weeks ago that Sara still had not fully accepted. He had agreed to lend a large sum of money to his younger brother without telling Sara first. She had found out 3 days later, and since then, there had been a cold silence between them. Not the comfortable kind of silence that comes between two people who understand each other. It was the heavy, suffocating kind. The kind that fills a room and makes it hard to breathe. Sara was looking out of the window. She watched the trees pass by one after another, blurring into a long green line. She was not thinking about the trees. She was thinking about the money. She was thinking about how they had been saving for months to fix the roof of their house before winter arrived. She was thinking about how Ahmed had taken that decision alone, without asking her, without even telling her. She was thinking about how it made her feel invisible, like her opinion did not matter, like she was not truly a partner in this marriage, but simply someone who had to accept whatever was decided for her. The silence broke somewhere near the edge of the city, about 20 minutes from home. It started with something small. It always does. Sara turned to Ahmed and said, quietly but firmly, that she needed him to talk to his brother and ask for the money back. She said they needed it. She said winter was coming and the roof could not wait. Ahmed gripped the wheel a little tighter. He told her it was not that simple. He told her his brother was going through a hard time. Sara said that they were also going through a hard time. Ahmed said she was being unfair. And just like that, the fire was lit. Their voices stayed low at first, the kind of arguing that tries to stay controlled but cannot. Zara looked up from the small stuffed animal she had been holding and looked at the back of her parents' heads. She could feel the tension in the air the way children always can, even when adults believe they are hiding it well. Bilal had fallen into a light sleep, his small head resting against the car door, his mouth slightly open. Zara pulled her stuffed animal closer and said nothing. She had seen her parents argue before. She knew the best thing to do was stay very still and very quiet. Ahmed told Sara that she never trusted him. Sara told Ahmed that trust had to be earned, and making major decisions without consulting her was not the way to earn it. Ahmed said he was trying to help his family. Sara said she was his family too. Ahmed said she never supported him when it came to his side of the family. Sara said she always supported him, but supporting him did not mean staying silent when he made mistakes. The words were coming faster now, each one sharper than the last. The car felt smaller with every passing second. The air inside felt thinner. Ahmed was no longer relaxed behind the wheel. His jaw was tight. His shoulders were raised. His knuckles had gone pale around the steering wheel. He was driving and arguing at the same time, and the part of his mind that should have been fully on the road was now divided. He was listening to Sara. He was forming his next response. He was feeling the heat rise in his chest the way it always did when he felt he was being misunderstood by the one person in the world who was supposed to know him best. He pressed the accelerator a little harder without realizing it. The car moved faster into the dimming evening light. Sara's voice cracked slightly as she said the things she had been holding back for 3 days. She said that she felt alone in this marriage. She said she felt like she was always the last to know anything important. She said she was tired of finding out about her own life from other people. Her voice was not loud, but it was filled with something much more powerful than volume. It was filled with pain. Real pain. The kind that builds up slowly over months and years and then comes out all at once, like water breaking through a dam. Ahmed heard it, and instead of softening, it made him feel worse. It made him feel like a failure. He turned to look at her, just for a moment, just to say something, just to respond to the look on her face. His eyes left the road for what felt like 1 second, maybe 2. In normal circumstances, 2 seconds on a familiar road in the evening is nothing. It is the blink of an eye. It is the length of a breath. But that evening, those 2 seconds were everything. Because in those 2 seconds, the car drifted. Slowly, at first, almost gently, like a boat being pulled by a current. It crossed the white line in the center of the road. It moved into the lane of oncoming traffic. The truck driver saw them before Ahmed saw the truck. He pressed his horn and his brakes at almost the same moment. The horn exploded through the evening air like a sound from another world. Ahmed's head snapped forward. He saw the headlights. He saw the massive front of the truck filling his entire windshield. He had no time to think. He had no time to react the way he would have wanted. He turned the wheel. But it was too late. The truck caught the front left side of the car with a force that was beyond anything Ahmed had ever felt in his life. The sound of the crash was not like anything you hear in a film. It was not clean or dramatic. It was a horrible, grinding, tearing sound. Metal against metal. Glass shattering in every direction. The car spun. The world tilted. For a moment, there was total confusion, a chaos of noise and movement, and then, suddenly, absolute silence. The car had come to a stop against the roadside barrier. Steam was rising from the front of the engine. One headlight was still on, throwing a pale yellow beam into the dust and darkness. Ahmed opened his eyes first. His ears were ringing. He could not understand what had happened for a few seconds. His chest hurt where the seatbelt had locked against him. He looked to his right. Sara was slumped forward, her hand hanging at an angle that looked wrong. He looked into the back seat. Zara was pressed against the door, her eyes wide open, her face white with shock. She was not crying. She was too frightened to cry. Bilal was still, his head against the seat, a thin line of blood running down from near his ear. Ahmed made a sound that was not a word. It was something deeper than words. People stopped their cars. Someone called for emergency help. Ahmed tried to open his door. It would not open. He pushed harder. It still would not open. He could hear Sara making a soft sound beside him, a low, painful sound. He called her name. She turned her head slowly. Her eyes were open but confused. She tried to lift her right arm and gasped. She could not move it without pain. Ahmed looked back at Bilal and called his name. Bilal did not respond. Ahmed called again, louder this time. Bilal made a small sound, barely a murmur, but it was enough. He was alive. Ahmed pressed his hand to his own face and felt something wet. He was bleeding too, from a cut near his temple, but he did not feel it. The emergency services arrived within minutes, though it felt much longer. The road filled with flashing lights, red, blue, white, cutting through the darkness that had fully arrived by now. The orange of the earlier sky was completely gone. Paramedics reached the car and began working quickly and calmly. They spoke in clear, professional voices. They asked Ahmed questions. They checked Sara. They carefully reached into the back seat to assess the children. Ahmed watched all of this, as if he were watching it from very far away, as if he were not fully inside his own body. His mind was caught somewhere between the moment of impact and right now, unable to move forward or backward. Sara was taken out of the car first. Her right arm was broken in 2 places. She was in pain, but she was conscious, and she kept asking about the children. The paramedics told her calmly to focus on staying still. Zara was helped out next. She had no major injuries, only bruising and deep shock. She was wrapped in a blanket and kept close to where Sara was being treated. Bilal was the last to be brought out, and that took longer. He had hit the side of his head during the impact. He was breathing, but he was unconscious. He was placed on a stretcher with great care and carried to the ambulance. Ahmed stood beside the road. A paramedic had cleaned the cut on his head and placed a bandage over it. He had no broken bones, no internal injuries. He was physically the least affected person in that car. And that fact, instead of bringing him relief, brought him something else entirely. Something much heavier. He stood there and watched his son being loaded into the ambulance, his wife being helped toward a second vehicle, his daughter wrapped in a blanket and staring at him with eyes that held a question she did not have the words to ask. He wanted the ground to open and swallow him whole. At the hospital, the hours moved like thick, heavy mud. Ahmed sat in a waiting area outside the emergency ward. He had called Sara's parents and his own. They arrived one by one, and the waiting room filled with people and whispered conversations and the sound of quiet weeping. Ahmed sat apart from everyone. People spoke to him. He answered. But he was not really present. He was still in the car. He was still hearing the horn of the truck. He was still seeing those headlights filling his windshield. He was still hearing the sound of the crash. Over and over and over again. The doctor came out and spoke to the family. Bilal had a concussion. There was some swelling, but the scans showed no permanent damage. He would need to be monitored carefully through the night. If the next few hours passed without complication, he would likely recover fully. The doctor said they had been fortunate. Ahmed heard the word fortunate and felt something move through him like a cold wave. Fortunate. His 5-year-old son was unconscious in a hospital room because of him. His wife had a broken arm because of him. His daughter was sitting in a corner of the waiting room, too afraid to cry, because of him. And they were calling it fortunate. Sara's parents took Zara to sit with them and gave her something to drink. Sara was in a hospital room with her arm set and bandaged. Ahmed was finally allowed to go in and see her. He stood at the door for a moment before entering. She was lying in the bed, her right arm in a cast, her face pale and tired. She looked at him when he walked in. Neither of them spoke for a long time. Then Sara's eyes filled with tears, not from anger, not from the argument, but from something that went far beyond the argument, from the shock of almost losing everything. Ahmed walked to the side of her bed and sat down. He took her left hand carefully in both of his. He lowered his head and he wept. A grown man sitting beside the hospital bed of his wife, weeping without sound, his shoulders shaking. He stayed by her side through the night, going back and forth between her room and the room where Bilal was being monitored. Around 2 a.m, Bilal opened his eyes. He looked confused and frightened, and he called for his mother. The nurse came quickly. Ahmed stood at the foot of the small bed and watched his son's eyes slowly come into focus. Bilal looked at him and said, "Baba." Just that one word. Ahmed could not speak. He simply nodded and moved closer and placed his hand gently on his son's small leg, and he stayed there. In the days that followed, the family slowly began to piece themselves back together. Bilal stayed in the hospital for 3 days and was then allowed to go home with careful instructions. Sara's arm would take several weeks to heal. Zara had nightmares for a long time after. She would wake up in the middle of the night, crying and calling out. Ahmed would go to her room and sit beside her until she fell back to sleep. He did this every night without complaint. It was the least he could do. It was not even close to enough, but it was what he had. Ahmed returned to the stretch of road where the accident had happened a week later. He went alone, in the early morning, before the traffic built up. He stood on the side of the road and looked at the marks still visible on the barrier. He looked at the road itself, at the white line that his car had crossed. He stood there for a very long time. The morning was quiet. A few birds were calling from the trees nearby. A light wind moved through the grass on the side of the road. Ahmed stood there and thought about 2 seconds. 2 seconds. That was all it had been. 2 seconds of his eyes leaving the road. 2 seconds that had nearly taken everything. He thought about the argument. He tried to remember what had felt so urgent, so important, so impossible to hold back in that moment. He thought about the money. He thought about his brother. He thought about feeling misunderstood, about feeling like he was being blamed unfairly, about the heat in his chest that had made him turn to look at Sara. And standing there on that quiet road in the morning light, all of it felt so incredibly small. The argument that had felt like the most important thing in the world 30 minutes before the crash felt now like nothing at all. Like dust. Like something that had never really mattered and had never really been worth a single word. He thought about what he almost lost. He thought about Bilal calling out the word Baba in that hospital room. He thought about Zara's white face through the car window. He thought about Sarah's eyes when she cried in that hospital bed, not from anger, but from relief and from grief all mixed together. He thought about how close it had all come, how thin the line was between that evening ending with them walking into their home tired and arguing and continuing their disagreement in the kitchen, and that evening ending with a hospital, a broken arm, an unconscious child, and a road full of flashing lights. A matter of seconds. A matter of 2 seconds. Ahmed is not a bad man. He never was. He loved his wife. He loved his children. He worked hard. He tried his best. He was simply human. He was tired and frustrated, and he made the mistake that thousands of people make every single day without thinking about it. He allowed his emotions to pull his attention away from the most important thing. And the road does not forgive that. The road does not care if you are right or wrong in your argument. It does not care how valid your feelings are. It does not care that you love the people sitting beside you. The moment your attention leaves, the danger arrives. And sometimes, the danger arrives faster than you can ever imagine. Sara and Ahmed talked properly for the first time, really talked, about 3 weeks after the accident. The children were asleep. They were sitting in their living room. The money, the brother, the roof, none of it was the main topic. What they talked about was everything underneath those things. They talked about feeling unheard, about feeling alone, about the distance that had been growing between them quietly, slowly, for longer than either of them had admitted. They talked about what almost happened. They talked about what they both still felt when they closed their eyes and tried to sleep. It was not an easy conversation, but it was an honest one. And it was the beginning of something. Not a perfect solution, but a real one. The money was eventually sorted out. Ahmed spoke to his brother, who understood and made a plan to return it in smaller amounts over time. The roof was fixed before the first snow fell. Zara's nightmares became less frequent as the weeks passed. Bilal healed completely and went back to being the loud, energetic, fearless 5-year-old he had always been. Life moved forward. The way life always does, carrying the weight of what happened, but also carrying the ordinary beauty of days and meals and school runs and small moments of laughter. The family stayed together. They chose each other, and they carried the memory of that October evening not as something to be ashamed of, but as something to be learned from, deeply and permanently. If you are reading this or listening to this, please understand one thing. Arguments in cars are not just arguments. They are dangers. When you argue while driving, you are not just fighting with the person beside you. You are gambling with every life in that vehicle. You are putting at risk the people you love most in the world over something that will almost certainly feel smaller tomorrow than it does today. Whatever you are fighting about, it can wait. It can wait until you are parked, until you are home, until you are on solid ground where the only thing that can break is your pride and not a windshield. Not a bone, not a life. Pull over if you need to. Stop the car. Let the anger breathe outside of a moving vehicle. Let the conversation happen somewhere safe. No argument is worth the cost of an accident. No point you need to make is important enough to risk the lives of your children sitting in the backseat, watching, listening, and feeling everything even when you think they are not. They always are. Children feel it all. They absorb the energy in a car the same way they absorb everything else in their world. And they deserve to feel safe. They deserve to reach home. Ahmed still drives that same road sometimes. He drives it carefully, both hands on the wheel, music low, phone in the back seat. When the road gets long and quiet, he sometimes thinks about that evening. Not with guilt the way he used to, though the guilt never fully disappears. He thinks about it as a reminder of how quickly things can change, a reminder that the people in the car with you are more precious than anything you could possibly be arguing about. A reminder that some lessons come at a very high price, and that the only right thing to do with a lesson that costly is to never, ever forget it. The disagreement that started it all was never truly about money. It was about feeling seen. It was about feeling respected. It was about two tired people carrying too much and not talking to each other the right way. And all of that was real, and all of that mattered. But it did not have to be said at 70 kilometers per hour on a darkening road. It did not have to be said in the heat of that exact moment. It could have waited. It should have waited. Because the person you are arguing with is also the person you cannot imagine living without. And the road ahead of you does not know that. Only you do. So choose to remember it. Every single time you get behind the wheel with someone you love, choose to remember it.